So if you've been on social media or YouTube very much at all, you've probably been hit with an ad for the Mr. Cool DIY mini split that you see a lot of influencers and YouTubers out there, they install and they use. This right here is not that. This is very simply, this is just a cheap mini split that I picked up from Home Depot. It's called a Ductless Aire brand is the name of it. And mind you, when I say cheap, it was still $985. That's still nothing to sneeze at. $985 is still $985, right? So what I mean is that compared to a lot of other stuff out there, this is cheaper. The main driving force behind that, honestly, was just kind of price for me at the time. But also I had a good buddy of mine that had picked one of these up a year or two before I got this one, and he was having good luck with it. The reviews were good. That kind of helped me to feel a little more comfortable about purchasing what I felt like was kind of the Harbor Freight of mini splits. So what I want to do with this video is I want to just kind of go over a quick overview of just kind of the whole idea of a mini split, what it does and kind of how it works and all of that stuff. I want to help to kind of maybe clear up a few questions that I know that I had when I got ready to purchase and install this. And then also I want to talk about an issue that I've had with it, how well I like it. I want to talk about some things to consider like location, the size of the unit that maybe you need versus the size of the room. And then also I want to talk about just how DIY friendly this thing was, as well as accessories that you might want to consider if you're going to be looking at putting one of these in. So real quick, I just want to clear up the fact that I'm not an HVAC guy. I'm probably going to say some terminology here that's not right, and there's probably going to be some people in the comments that are going to be quick to tell me that. So first off, the way that this kind of works is I like to think of it in terms of almost like you would a window unit. You know, and what we did was you kind of take with a mini split and you separate out the part that does the blowing, the fan side, and then the part that does the cooling. Okay, we kind of got the indoor and the outdoor units. It's just kind of how I very simply like to think of it. This indoor unit just very simply just mounts on this wall, and it's really just like an aluminum French cleat really that just mounts up there, and it just kind of hangs there with that. Then it's got some lines and some line sets here, a control wire, and some things that go between the two units. So like I said, we're thinking about it kind of like a window unit. But what happens is that being able to do it this way, we're able to move this into some different places in the room. And then also we're able to take that outdoor unit, put it in maybe a little bit more of an inconspicuous spot, kind of out of the way, rather than just like sticking out of a window in the front of your house. A couple of things to think about is that there's a couple of different copper lines in here, and I know that it's a little bit hard to tell here. I'll go ahead and remove this. This is just a plastic cover here that I purchased off of Amazon that just kind of helps to keep all of this kind of put together and looking a little bit cleaner and nicer. But you've got a couple of different copper lines here. You've got a drain tube, and then you've also got this control wire. All of this stuff was fairly straightforward and simple. The copper line you want to be super careful with. You want to unroll that very carefully, and you want to make sure that as you do that, that you don't kink anything, you don't twist anything. You want to just kind of take your time with that. Control wire, it's fairly straightforward to install that. And then the drain tube, you want to just run this out. Want to make sure that it's somewhere where it can drain just kind of naturally by gravity. You can take this out the side like I've done here. You can take it out the other side as well, but you can also go straight out the back with it. And so what I was trying to find and kind of where I ended up putting in mine, I had to run it out this side, bring it down, and then take it down. And actually it goes out and then it turns and goes down that way. So we're going to hop now, we're going to swap out there, and I'll show you what that looks like. So if you can picture this, this is essentially where that indoor unit is mounted right now. It goes over, it comes down, and it comes out right here, and then runs this direction outside this wall. And this is the condensation drain that comes out. It's a little bit of a wet mess out here. My plan is eventually to get a piece of PVC, run it down along that bottom piece down there, and that'll kind of help to maybe kind of clean some of that up so there's not such a wet mess right here. Then we go over and we bring these line sets come all the way across, and they come down right here into the unit, as well as those control wires. And then also you've got the panel here. This is the fuse box, and essentially this is very simply just a little fuse box, and it's got a couple of 30 amp fuses in here, and this just runs down to 220 volts. I wired this all up myself, but just because I was comfortable doing that, I would definitely say if you're not comfortable doing that, don't have to worry about doing that. Get somebody to do that. As far as this outdoor unit is concerned, I also have this kind of raised up off the ground. I've got that bracket there. We'll talk a little bit more about that inside, but this thing's super quiet. Most of the time I don't even know it's running. It's that quiet. Now, when it came to this unit, I had to figure out a place that I could put this, that it would kind of do the best job that it would do for this shop. Now, ultimately, I actually wanted it over here on this wall, but I actually had, this is kind of my lumber wall over here, and that, I actually had taken all the lumber down and was planning on putting it over there, and had really given that some serious consideration, but the problem was I still needed to be able to get everything back over here. So what I was going to end up having to do is I was going to end up having to go up into the attic with it and then bring it back down. I didn't really like that. I could have put it on the ceiling. I went through a lot of different ideas of trying to figure out how to get that line set out there. But the real issue for me was that I was trying to figure out the best way to handle that whole drain. And so I talked to a buddy of mine that was an HVAC guy, and I just said, hey, what am I going to end up doing if I have to do that? And he was like, well, you got to buy a pump, and it helps to kind of pump the condensation out and all that stuff. And I saw that as being something that eventually was going to be trouble down the line. So I just kind of avoided that, and I went ahead and I put it on this wall. Now my shop lays out a little bit funny. This whole area here in front of me is all just basically a giant square. It's about a 22 by 22 shop. Over here though, I've got this kind of little alcove thing that's like an 8 by 10 alcove over here, and that's why this was not the most optimal place to put it, because it does do a great job. This over here gets super cool super fast. This out here takes a little bit longer, but now at the end of the day, this still does a great job of getting the job done. The biggest benefit that I've found for helping this to kind of maintain and control temp out here is what I do is I simply just take the remote control. It came with a remote control. I just take that remote control, and it's got a follow me button. So I just hit that follow me button on the remote control, and then what it does is it uses the remote control as the thermostat. So wherever it's setting, it determines, okay, this is where I'm taking the temp down. And so I just set it right out here somewhere, and I've just got it mounted on the wall. So that just kind of helps me to control the temp and to get everything down in here to the temp that I need it to be, rather than it maintaining a temperature, it getting cool in just kind of this more alcove area and then shutting down. This is a 12,000 BTU unit, and this shop is 575-ish feet or so if you consider this alcove as well. So, you know, you're looking at, this is kind of on the top of the line of what they recommend. I don't have a huge issue keeping things cool in here unless it's like 105, and even then it's still going to say about 75 in here, which is way better than 105. A couple of things to consider though is insulation. The attic here is directly above me, and so I've not actually had time to go in and blow in any insulation up there yet. I know that will make a huge difference when I do that, but in my opinion, when it's still, like today, it's like 95 and it's about 71 in here. So I'll take that. That's pretty good, honestly. The other thing that I did first off though was I went ahead and I insulated the garage door, and I used the Owens Corning garage door insulation kit. Now this kit is not super pretty in my opinion, but it does do the job and it helps a lot. It is a little bit heavy, but on this door here, it seems to handle just fine. And honestly, most of the time this door stays down, so the weight doesn't really matter that much, because again, I use this as a shop. This is not a home for my cars. So as far as how DIY friendly this thing is, I feel like it was fairly DIY friendly. I know the Mr. Cool unit, that's kind of their whole shtick, is that they're DIY friendly. But for me, I wanted to go ahead and run this all through, and I was totally fine with getting an HVAC guy to come out to cut that line set off, to reflare that, to connect all that stuff up for me, and to do it, pull a vacuum, do all that stuff right. So I wasn't as concerned with everything being DIY. Also, I was totally comfortable with doing that electrical. So again, that was one of those things where you may not be comfortable doing that. You may want to have a guy come out and do that, 220 volts. If you're not comfortable doing that, totally get an electrician to do it. There is no shame in paying somebody to do something that maybe you just don't feel comfortable doing. I got an HVAC guy, I use him all the time. You saw me taking this off earlier. This is just simply like a little poly sleeve that goes over this. You mount one part on the wall, and then this just clips in over it. It's also got this 90 that helps to clean this up where it goes through the wall. I've got one on the outside. I turned it and went that way. It's very simple, very cheap. I picked it up on Amazon. I'll put a link in the description if you're interested in that. I highly recommend it if you just want to kind of clean up the look of that outside, or even in your shop like I did here. The other thing that I would highly recommend would be that bracket that you saw on that outdoor unit. That thing gets it up off the ground. Don't have to worry about snow, leaves, stuff like that. I've only got mine about a foot up off the ground, but I don't have any issue with it rattling or causing any kind of issue on this wall. I don't even know that it's out there running. Super quiet. I have no issues with that. It's got those rubber bumpers on it to kind of help mitigate any of those kind of things. The one issue that I had was the remote receiver last month went out on this thing. So I sent an email to Ductless Aire, and they got back to me very quickly. And I even told them in the email, I said, hey, this thing's actually out of the 1-year warranty, but this is what I'm experiencing. And they said, hey, look, it sounds to us like it's the remote receiver. We're just going to send you another one. So they sent me another remote receiver. Didn't ask for any money, didn't ask for anything. I was impressed with that, even though it was technically out of the warranty. And that thing, if you've never used one of these or opened one of these, they simply just open up like this, and this remote receiver mounts right there. Just took a couple of screws. It's got a couple of Molex connectors that you plug in, and then we were back in business. While I've got that open, I also want to just go ahead and mention, don't forget, if you've got one of these units, these are filters right here, and they just slide out, and so you need to pull those, blow those out, clean those out at least every 30 days or so, because especially if they're in a shop like this, they will get dusty. So with the fact that it's June right now, it's a little bit hard to be thinking about heat, but this unit is also a heat pump, and so it does heat, and it does a great job. It runs, honestly, about 80% of the time. Over the last year, it's ran 75 to 85% of the time, most of the time out here, because me or my wife, Juan, are always out here back and forth doing different projects and things, and so it runs a lot. I will say on the heat pump side, when it gets super cold, anything below about 20 degrees or so, I'm probably going to shut it off. It's just not going to be super efficient. It runs and it does kind of what they call like a defrost mode. So it's kind of weird. You'll go out there and it's kind of almost like it's froze up a little bit. It's all a part of this whole process of it when it gets super cold. But it did do a good job of still keeping things easily in the 60s in here. So if you got any other questions and I've left anything out, let me know down in the comments below, or you can also reach me over on Instagram. You can shoot me a DM. I'd be happy to help in any way that I can.